Okay, this commences the AdClub Student Day 2023. Welcome to anyone joining in. We're going to give everyone a few minutes. The start time is 12:30. We'll give to about 12:35 to get started, and we will kick it off. So welcome, and thank you for joining. I see we're already up to about 30 plus people, so that's great. All of our early birds. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. I wish we had some music. I know we said this last year too. I'm sure we can play it, but I don't want to try to figure out that technology right now. Welcome everybody. All right, for everyone on the line, we still have about 10 minutes before we'll get started. So thank you for joining, and we'll get going shortly. Hi, everyone. Welcome for those who are joining. We'll get started in about 10 minutes. Thank you. Matthew or Dorina, do you want to do a dance or sing us a song while we're waiting to start? Not to put you on the... Awesome. See, we're up to 50 plus people. This is great. We're going to get started in just under 10 minutes. Yes, if anyone has any questions they want to start putting in the Q&A box, please do for our keynote speaker or our panelists. Get them in there. I can see the questions. Can everyone else see the questions as well that Jill just did the test? Awesome. I think I figured out how to enable the chat. Does everyone want to see if they're able to type in the chat? Maybe just say hello, what school you're from, and maybe where you live, and we can get to know everyone who's on the line. We'll get started in about 10 minutes or less. Yay, amazing. Also, make sure you select to everyone. Right now, I can see a couple people, Vanshika, Monanish, you just wrote to hosts and panelists. So if you're going to use the chat, it should say two, and then a little blue box that says hosts and panelists. Just hit the drop down and click to everyone. There we go. Hi, Jessica from Durham College, Michaela from Humber, Suli from Humber, Sebastian, yay, welcome. Exciting to see some folks from all of the schools that we teach at. Thanks everyone for joining. We're just going to give it a few moments while everyone jumps in. Please do write in what school you go to and where you're from. Durham College, George Brown College, Seneca, welcome. Oh, I'm talking on mute. That's a classic move. I was just saying, make sure you're writing to everyone in the chat. I see a few folks did to host. That might have been just to let me know that I'm on mute. So thank you for that. But do get in any questions in the Q&A box as well. We have a lot of amazing industry leaders here today. So get those questions in the Q&A section as well, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Hi, everyone. We've got George Brown, University of Toronto, amazing. Seneca. All right, we just hit 75 people. That's awesome. And we're going to get started in about 5 minutes. So welcome, everyone. Please put your name, what school you go to and where you're from, and we'll get started soon. Lambton College, Durham College. Some great questions in the Q&A already as well. Thanks, everyone. All right, welcome everybody to AdClub Student Day. We're just going to wait a few more minutes while everyone joins in. Thanks so much for taking the time today to join. Please do write what school you go to and where you're from in the chat, and we'll get going in a few minutes. Loving to see all the activity in the chat. Let's keep it going. We're so excited for all the amazing panelists and industry leaders we have today to connect with you, donating their time to be here virtually. It's always such great sessions, great discussion, and valuable insight and advice. We're just going to give it a few more minutes while everyone's just trickling in here. If you're new, welcome. Please do write in what school you go to and where you're from. And also fill in on the Q&A tab any questions that you may have, and we can get those collected for the panelists. Just double checking here. I tried to turn captions on here to make this more accessible. Is anyone seeing the captions? Just maybe get a head nod. Welcome everyone for joining. We're going to get started in a few moments here. Okay, great. I think I see the captions working as well. Thank you for flagging that. Hope this makes it more accessible for everyone. We're just going to give it a few more minutes while we have everyone joining in here. Please do write in the chat to make sure you have to everyone. And say what school you go to, where you're from, and then also feel free to add into the Q&A any questions you have for our panelists. This is a webinar feature, so yes, if you are an attendee, you won't have any video, but hopefully you can see all of us from the AdClub committee on the line, and we'll just get started in a few moments. And there will be a recording. Yep, great question. It's recording, and it will be sent out afterwards as well. All right, what do we think? Should we get started, everyone? Do I see some head nods? Amazing. All right, welcome everyone to AdClub Student Day 2023. We are so excited to have you all here with us virtually and hopefully later as well in person for our exciting in-person networking event at Cassette. This is our 5th annual AdClub Student Day, which is so exciting. It is one of the newest events for AdClub. We saw it as a need within the community to get access to students, help you as you transition to your graduation and into your careers. So this is for you. Our entire committee is volunteers putting this on. We have some amazing industry leaders today. So let's get started. I'm Caitlin Neve. I am the Vice President of the AdClub of Toronto and former lead of the student committee. We have Darina and Matthew, who you should be able to see their beautiful faces as well, who are the chairs of the student committee, who worked tirelessly to put this event together today. So kudos to you and your team. And I'll now introduce Amanda, our president of the AdClub, to share a bit more about what we do and who we are.
Thank you, Caitlin. So yes, as Caitlin mentioned, I'm Amanda Newell. I'm the president of the AdClub. But what the heck is the AdClub? So I should, as Caitlin has mentioned, we are in fact a not-for-profit organization, and we're run surely and purely by industry volunteers like the wonderful Darina, Student Day Chair, and Caitlin, who is your host for today. And we're so glad and proud and pleased to always volunteer for you. So every cent that the AdClub actually makes goes to both and I should say that the AdClub makes from our educational events like Digital Day and our ever so fun party events like Halloween, our Halloween party, goes to NABS, which is the National Advertising Benevolence Society. You're going to hear a little more about that from Mark coming up next. But it's our industry's very own charity. And it also, the money that we generate also goes directly to you by virtue of our AdClub scholarship program. So some of our scholarship winners of late are Cassette's very own Bias Frippeland, who you might meet at the networking event tonight, and Lourdes Valdovinos, who will be profiled from Sheridan College, who will be profiled in our December newsletter. So I will very much, first of all, I'm going to get off screen now so that you can hear more about getting into this industry, but I'll hope to meet all of you at the networking party tonight. And I should say, at the last AdClub Student Day networking party, I actually hired somebody from that event. So I am very much looking forward to meeting you all. Thank you very much. And here is Mark Neves from NABS itself. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Amanda. Appreciate the intro. As Amanda mentioned, my name is Mark Neves. I'm the director of the Ontario market for NABS. Who is NABS, you may be wondering? Well, NABS is your industry charity. So we provide a suite of services to all marketing and communications professionals in Canada that are offered in a confidential way and are completely free to the community. So we've been operating for almost 40 years, and our birthday is actually coming up in just a few weeks. And during that time, we've supported more than 50,000 people in this business from coast to coast. 2024 is going to be such an exciting time for NABS, which is going to see us roll out an entire suite of new programming specifically designed around supporting new grads and new entrants into our industry. They're going to include education bursaries through support from partners like the AdClub of Toronto, industry onboarding, mentorship support, and much more. So stay tuned. That is all in addition to the core of what NABS will always be, which is a mental health support resource. We provide coaching and skill development, and of course, a safety net for members of our community at their most difficult times. So please check us out at nabs.org. Follow us on social to stay up to date on all things NABS. We are NABS Canada on all the major platforms. And I would say, typically I would have the opportunity to meet many of you this afternoon at the in-person component of this event, but unfortunately I'm going to be unable to attend. So what I can offer is that if you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, we can chat. I can answer any questions that you may have about the industry and of course about all things NABS. So please connect, reach out and ask questions. Finally, I want to extend a huge thank you to Caitlin and the rest of the AdClub team for inviting me here today. Amanda did mention, but so all of you know, AdClub is actually NAB's biggest donor. So we are incredibly grateful for that support. Please continue to support the AdClub because by doing so, you're supporting NABS and the rest of our wonderful community. So enjoy the session. There looks to be a ton of great content. I know I'm looking forward to it. And back over to Caitlin and team.
Thanks so much, Mark. Really, really appreciate it. We're always happy to have you and have our great partnership. Also want to thank to all of our amazing sponsors, Cassette, where we have our amazing keynote from, as well as hosting us for our in-person networking later. Excited to meet you all, hopefully there. Auto Trader, shout out to them as one of our top sponsors, Amazon, M&K Media, The Trade Desk, Spotify, and Quantcast. We'll talk a little bit more at the end of the virtual session today of what you can expect at the in-person session. We'll have representatives and booths from a lot of these companies and organizations that will have their hiring teams there, and you can network and make connections. So stay tuned, stay on the line into the end of this session so you can learn more about the in-person. And stay tuned and stay on because we do have prizes, which everyone loves. So how are you going to win these prizes? The first, the M&K donated to $50 Amex gift cards will be during panel 1. You'll hear a shout out from the moderator for when to type in the chat. So pay attention, stay close. Similarly for panel 2, 5 interview analysis donated by Clever Hire, where you can win submitting your video style interview and they'll provide you feedback on areas to improve. Highly invaluable. And then lastly, Spotify, who has been an amazing sponsor throughout the years, is donating 10 free premium subscriptions. And that will be if you attended today and logged into the webinar and stayed to the end, you will be entered into a random raffle draw for the premium subscriptions. So can I hear some love in the chat here for all these amazing prizes donated by our sponsors? Thank you. Awesome. Okay, quickly, housekeeping and agenda. We have just on our introductions, I'm going to shortly pass it over to our keynote. Then we have 2 panels. We'll wrap it up by 3 p.m. Absolute latest, which gives you 2 hours to travel, commute to our in-person networking, which starts at 5 p.m. at Cassette. Once again, we'll tell you a little bit more details at the end. All that information, if you registered, you should have also received location, easiest way to get there. We are at capacity. We have a lot of folks who registered, but please do come down. We want to ensure and try to make sure everyone gets in and can at least walk through, see the booths and meet everyone. So do come and do write in the chat if you do have any questions about it, but we hope to see you there. All right. Enough from me, enough from us. Big round of virtual applause and applause in the chat for our amazing keynote speaker, Saba Kwao, who's the CCO of Cassette Media. He has over 30 years of experience. He's a creative leader, an entrepreneur, and a business strategist. He is a digital and social veteran and built and grown several platforms and companies across content, fintech, and in the culture space. He has a wealth of diversified experiences and brings a very unique and forward-thinking creative perspective. Happy to introduce and welcome Sabah. Please come on video. I'm going to stop sharing and give you the space to share your screen now. And we are so excited to have you here and speak with the students today. Everyone buckle in, it's gonna be great.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? Great. Speaking to students is literally one of my favorite things to do. I've been in this industry 30 years, and just being able to spend your career immersed in creativity is literally one of the best things you could possibly do and the best places you could land. And I am, in a unique position. I've had a long career and have lots of insights and comparisons, not just working in Canada, but also out of the UK, and I've done projects and teams in about a dozen countries. And one thing is consistent: creativity is valued everywhere. Cossette is an interesting place to be because we're on our 50th anniversary. And as a result, we have seen a lot in terms of the evolution of our clients and their businesses. And over the course of that time, we get to see a lot in terms of how does creativity work in Canada? How does that work across the country? We are business built on creativity. And it's not just creative in terms of what we do every day. It's also about the creativity and the problem solving that we bring on a day-to-day basis for every one of our clients. Really, when they come through the door, the reason they're here is they have some kind of problem that they need us to resolve in terms of where and how to reach an audience, where and how to grow a business, a brand, a sales, or launch a new business into the world. And the value of having that perspective and of being able to apply that creativity on an ongoing basis actually makes you better and better at it. So when they say creativity is like a muscle, and if you continue to work it, you get stronger at it, I can absolutely say that's true. And what's interesting about that is it means that once you start on this path, you can actually have a very long career. One of my mentors is an architect named Bruce Kuwabara, who runs a very well-renowned firm called KPMG Architects. And he's been a mentor of mine for 25 or 30 years. He's probably in his 70s. And he says to me, Sabah, I'm just getting started. So he is an example of a creative thinker where he says, oh no, I'm never stopping. I always have an idea that I can bring to bear. And I think that is true for all of us once you dive into your creative career. Now, there's a lot of discussion about what is the future of creativity. And when you think about the advantage creative people have, we're living in a complex world, and people who can apply their creativity are in a better position to take on what's coming. That has to do with the nature of change, speed, complexity. But when you have this kind of agility, you are better equipped to take it on. And there was a study about a decade ago. They interviewed 1,500 executives at IBM. And when they ranked what they felt was the most important attribute or element for success in business, creativity ranked number one. And it's interesting because that's not necessarily a creative firm, but even in the realm of business, saying the one ingredient that we can count on is creativity in order to drive our innovation and growth, and everything else bubbles up based on that capability. So it's interesting to say that it's valuable in business, it's valuable to us as creative people. And one of the things I say to people in the industry is that we have to take our skill very seriously because it is that valuable. In that discussion around the future of creativity, there isn't a day that doesn't go by. Oh, someone needs to go on mute. There isn't a day that doesn't go by where there isn't a discussion around AI. AI has created, I would say, a level of apprehension and anxiety, where people start to wonder, are we going to lose our creative position because an AI can do it? And I find it odd because just like any other change in an industry, it's usually creative people taking on a new set of tools, a new set of skills. And again, being creative, you end up being one of the first to be able to wrap your head around how to use a new technology. So rather than being intimidated, really the approach is to lean in. I have two teenage boys, 15 and 17, and one of them is in an art school. And I probably got onto ChatGPT probably within the first couple of weeks. And within a week of that, I had him on it because I said, you know what? Dive into the tool and play with it. And let's start to figure out how we can train an AI on your own work. And so this is the creative process. Something gets put in front of you. And as we used to say in design school, you have to step into the darkness. And you step into the darkness. And you know, when you walk into a dark room and it takes you a second, but after a while, you can kind of make things out and see where you're going and what you're doing. And AI to me is the same thing. You step into that space, you get your bearings, you start to play with it, and you will come out with some kind of outcome that is unique to you or useful to the projects and the teams that you're working on. I often refer to what we do as playing with things. You are playing with ideas, you're playing with your creativity, you're playing with space, you're playing with audiences. And when you take that mental approach to play, it really reduces the amount of intimidation around any number of things that you encounter in your work. I also like to talk about, well, what is it that AI can't do? So when you think of how AI works, it's essentially a prediction machine. It predicts the next pixel, it predicts the next word, but it can't make a decision. It can't make a decision for you. So when I think about what is one of my skills, you can put 3 campaigns in front of me, you can put 10 campaigns or 10 logos in front of me, and I will pick one. So regardless of how they were generated, I still have to make a decision, and that decision is what my clients are counting on. We might make it collaboratively, but I make a recommendation. And so that's one thing that an AI can't do. It can't decide for you. But the other thing that an AI doesn't have is it doesn't have empathy. Empathy is a perfect complement to your skill as a creative person. And the reason for that is, we have about something like 80 clients. And every time a client walks in, I probably have to learn something new about them, about the problem they're trying to solve. And then I have to think about the problem that they're trying to solve and the audience they're trying to reach. So when I have to think about putting myself in the space of the person receiving a piece of communication, I have to start to imagine myself in that context in order to have a better appreciation for the problem that I'm solving. And again, as I said at the beginning, when you do this all the time, you get stronger at it. And when you can bring your empathy to the table, you actually are in a better position to solve some of the problems that are put in front of you. And the problems are challenging. So when we think about, let's think about the context of the era that we're in right now, or even in this period of this month, and we think about what people or brands or situations that people are going through, having empathy is one of the first things that we need to put forward. And then when we think about the nature of the problems that we're tackling, sometimes there isn't any clear answer. In business, there's a range of problems that we call wicked problems, where the cultural or sociological context of the thing that we're trying to solve makes it difficult to understand any clear path to solving the problem. But again, who's going to be best equipped to solve that problem is someone who applies some creativity. But before you dive into it, it helps to have some empathy for the situation and the context of the problem that you're trying to solve. So I like to think about empathy as this perfect complement to your creativity. And when you apply that, again, this thing that an AI can't do, or this thing that you can't abdicate that responsibility, it means that we're still in the business sometimes of creating magic. And I like to think about it as magic. Once again, this playful take on what we do. But it is like magic. It is like empathy. We start off at the beginning of every project with a blank page. And confidently, we know that by applying our creativity in collaboration with our individuals in our teams and our explorations and in our experience, that blank page turns into something useful. We take nothing and turn it into something, and that is magic. And how many people get to do that as part of their day-to-day, as part of a job? It's something that you can embrace personally and professionally. And I do like being in the magic business, and I think it's quite exciting for many of you to be starting down that path. The other word I like to play with is the word power. And when you first encounter the word power, it's almost a little bit hints of negativity. And I put it down there as a provocation, and I'll tell you why. Early in my education, I remember taking a poli-sci 101 class. And the prof walked in and said, and she put that word up on the wall, and she said, does anyone know what power is? And people threw down their different answers, and she said, power is the ability to induce change. And I've never forgotten that description, because it takes the edge out of this notion of power. And I love the fact that she used the word to induce change. So if we take our creativity, we apply our empathy, we wade into these situations when we're problem solving. And what is it we're trying to do? Is we're trying to nurture and nudge and move people gently into being receptive to a message. And that power to induce change, to me, is a kind of magic, but it also says to me, as you know, as Peter Parker would say, or Spider-Man would say, with great power comes great responsibility. And I say that in all seriousness because what we do for a living comes with a responsibility, because we are filters. We're filters of messages, we're filters of culture, we're filters of society. And we know that we live in a culture that's greatly affected visually. So when we put up a billboard, a poster, a campaign, or a television spot, our audience sometimes consumes the message whole without necessarily thinking about it. So we as filters, if we come to the table and we code or encode biases or distortions into our work, we actually do a disservice to the audience and to society, rather than taking the responsibility for that power that we have, thinking about the messages that we create, taking care to build empathy about the topic or the audience that we're reaching out to. And with that great power, when we apply that responsibly, we can actually have a pretty decent and interesting impact on society. There is in the world sort of a love-hate relationship with advertising. And, you know, is it too intrusive? Is it too pervasive? But really, it's no different from anything else. And it's a question of where and how we apply that skill, where and how we apply that creativity. And once again, you get into this notion of having to have a great responsibility for the power that you're wielding. So when I say, you know, you build this together in terms of working on your creativity, how do you do that? We have about, between cassette and cassette media, we have about 900 people. And baked into that are people who are interested in so many different kinds of things. So they come to work as themselves, as an art director or a writer or an account person, but they also bring in themselves as outside people. We have musicians, we have writers, we have DJs, we have bakers, we have someone who writes television scripts on the side. There is such a wide range of things that people do. And that diversity of experiences are what I expect people to bring, because really my job is to influence and manage and nurture a group of people, but my job is never to make them like me. I am better off understanding what they bring in that's unique, that's different, that gives them a different lens or different empathy or different angle on how to solve a problem. And when I combine that together, that's where and how we produce the magic. And the words I often use is, we are very much about building unique combinations. When I take A plus B and I overlap them slightly and I get something different, that's what we do with our teams, with our people, with our collaborations, with our clients. And so how do you work on your creativity? It's really about not being too narrowly focused on only what's in front of you. You have to go exploring. So I was in an interview earlier this week and someone said, well, where do you go for your influences and your interests, or what are the things that have captured your attention or your imagination? And I gave an example. One of the last books I read was written by a filmmaker and writer named Werner Herzog. You might have seen him in The Mandalorian, so he's also an actor. And he wrote a book about a Japanese soldier who had been left during World War II on one of the islands in the Philippines, and he didn't know that the war was over. And so for 30 years, he would see new kinds of planes going by, he would see different movements of things going on, but it wasn't until 30 years later that they were able to find him and get to him and let him know that the war was over. It was based on a true story. And why did that influence me creatively? I think about the compression of time of that story in that little book. And at no point while I was reading the book did I feel that it was long. At no point did I feel the passage of those 30 years, but I felt the character aging as we went. And so I walked away from that story. And then as I'm reviewing ideas, I sometimes think about that character saying, that is probably the most interesting character I've encountered in a year. And as we get into brands or characters or storylines that we're building, this is an example of an influence at the back of my mind that says, how do I compress time? How does someone who doesn't know what's going on the outside world interpret all the things that they're seeing from the vantage point that they have? And so you read a book like that, you dive into having that kind of empathy with a character, and it influences your understanding of human nature in some way. And I'm sure all of you, if you pause and think about those encounters of things that have stuck in your head, anything that you encountered over the last few days or weeks, you can start to see how you weave it together as a story that starts off from whatever the starting point was, but you can take it anywhere that you want in terms of where and how to apply your creativity. So the answer on how to work on your creativity really is a kind of self-indulgence or a kind of selfishness, where I want you to explore the things that interest you that have absolutely nothing to do with your work. They have to do with what interests you because it caught your attention for any reason. You combine that with deepening your empathy, and suddenly you have the basis of your own unique combination. Your influences are completely different from hers, are completely different from his. And so when you come to the table, you're almost guaranteeing that you're bringing a unique combination to the table. Now, the interesting thing about that is, as a student, when you start off on your first day, your first week, your first month in any company that you're joining, your creativity is one of the areas where you're at no disadvantage to anyone who's been in the industry longer or shorter than you. Because that core nugget of creativity is raw, it's unique, and what you learn in the business is how to recognize a good idea, how to put some shape to that idea, and then how to package that and roll that out in the service of solving a problem. But on your first day, you're at no disadvantage in terms of your raw creativity. And one of the things that we've been doing in terms of when I speak to my team of executive creative directors and my group creative directors, and I say to them, we have to pay very close attention to the people who are first coming in through our door for their first jobs, because I need to make sure that we respect and nurture the raw creativity that they're bringing in on their first day. They're optimistic, I don't want them jaded. I don't want them to feel discouraged. I want them to be recognized for their prolific, raw, explosive, interesting, dangerous, provocative ideas. And our job as a senior management team and as a leadership team is to help them recognize how to take those ideas and shape them. That shows how we as leaders also have to work on our empathy in terms of understanding our talent, putting ourselves in their shoes, and thinking how to bring the best experience that we can at the start of their career, because this is that impressionable period that we want them to sort of take hold, build their first sense of strength and encouragement around their capability, and then go out and extend that into the long term of your career. So that gives you a sense of how I think about creativity. That gives you a sense of how I want you to think about the industry that you're entering and the opportunity. As you encounter people that you find that you have affinity for, or a strong sense of collaboration with, these are the people that you can find collaborating together in order to build unique combinations together. And you'll find that as you get into mid and longer career, you start to recognize who, where, and how you do your best work. And that's the best way to start to sustain your energy to be able to do this kind of career for life. Thanks for your time and attention. And I know I'll be seeing some of you in person at Cassette. So we welcome having you. We're looking forward to having you here. Thanks very much.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. I've got chills at various points, and I love a good Mandalorian reference too. Really exciting. If you're able to stay on for a couple more minutes, we'd love to ask you a couple questions from our Q&A box. So everyone, once again, students, please go in the Q&A box, type in a question. One that I love from Emma Aquino says, how has AI changed the ideation process?
Okay. So there are parts of the process that have been sped up. I can, instead of wandering around ruminating for 10 hours, sometimes you can put a prompt in 10 minutes, you have a lot to work with. You have a lot sitting in front of you. And the interesting thing about it is the majority of the things that are put in front of you are really bad. And most of you know this. You've punched something in and you've looked at a bunch of answers and like, there's something about it that feels a little bit off. And so what's interesting is the volume of things that you can now generate is high, but the quality ideas are still the same number. So you still have to do that thing I said about applying your judgment call to find that thing. And I'm oversimplifying, but I'm almost going to say, well, nothing has changed. You've got a tool that can spit out a lot of things. A lot of that stuff won't be memorable. We're in the business of creating memorable work. So you end up throwing out 99% of what's put in front of you. Let's go on to the next.
Yeah. Here's one from Visura Silva. As an international student in Canada, what are the key points you would focus on when trying to be hired?
Okay. So because I've worked in so many countries, I think the best thing that an international student has is an outside perspective. So rather than thinking about it as a disadvantage, you come in with the lens that is actually incredibly valuable for a country like Canada that is made up of so many different kinds of communities. So I know when I see international students coming in, I think, there's a unique combination that we can work with. And I think, it used to be one of those biases in the industry where people would say, oh, you don't have enough Canadian experience. And that's the kind of nonsense that we need to throw out. It's the uniqueness of someone's perspective that actually gives us an advantage. And I think you will find some organizations quite ready to embrace the points of difference and perspectives that you can bring in. It is so valuable. When I've worked in other countries, and it's great to be a Canadian working in other countries, people love Canadians, but you come in fresh. And whether I've been in Tokyo or Seoul or Bucharest or Prague, you have a fresh perspective. And when you are really good at your creative and really good at presenting an idea, and you step into those contexts where you're the outsider, everyone listens to you. So again, really respect your outside perspective. It's one of the most valuable things you have. And we all have different outside perspectives. International students is just one lens. Everyone should think about their outside perspective. Everyone should think about their unique combination.
I love that. And I think that's something that's hard when you're new and kind of starting your career. You have that imposter syndrome, but I think what you learn is that you all have something unique to offer. So really, really love that sentiment. Okay, another one here from Danushki Pereira. In the creative industry, they ask a lot to send a portfolio. Any tips or guidance, what's needed for that, that you can help the students with?
So there are two things I love about portfolios. Some people will include a sketch part of their portfolio that just sort of shows me how they free associate, how they think, what are the weird little tangents that they might go down in terms of what interests them. And then you have the formal part of your portfolio where you really want to be concise. I don't want to look through 30, 40, or 50 things. I'd rather look through 7 to 10 with a brief explanation or insight of exactly what you were thinking or doing. And that's the way I like to do it. But I also know that, I often don't see a lot of portfolios because it goes through many of my teams. So the empathy there is having some respect for their time. They work at a crazy pace in terms of the range of things that you're doing. So if you can be really concise and point to the insight so that they can look down and appreciate your work and digest it and form a point of view quickly, that's doing them a service. But it also shows that you know how to make an edit. It shows that you know how to make a judgment call about what is the most important thing to put in front of someone in order to make the best use of their time.
And I think that's really valuable too, because it goes all the way from your application to when you do actually have a job and are presenting to client. It's those similar kind of skills of knowing how to distill down, make it short and concise and to the point. Love that. Here's a few that are kind of similar. We've got from Tia, Rhythm, and Shivax, where it's about what's the best way to get the creative juices flowing, to find inspiration, or if your creativity is dying down, how do you keep that flame alive? And then kind of building on that, it's asked, how does Cassette have a responsibility to sort of push the boundaries for creativities for a client, even if they're not ready?
So one, you have to get yourself into a mental space to say that you will never run out of ideas. It's just a mental trick. And really, when you're stuck, you really can do the easiest thing, which is to get up and remove yourself from the context that you're in, go for a walk. You just need to look at something else to spark your memory or your thinking in a different way. And if you keep removing yourself from one context and moving into a next, that's what I mean by it's like stepping into the darkness. And after a while, you're going to see your way through. But it's a mental trick. You have to know that when you walk into that room, it's dark. And then you pause. That pause is so valuable in terms of saying, I need to change context, move yourself into another context, and give yourself the luxury and the benefit of a fresh start.
Love that. Going for a walk always helps too. Okay, maybe one or two more questions here. We have a lot on AI, and I know you already addressed it a little bit, but building on that. So if AI is the future, should ads be dependent on it or for the long run? And how do you measure the outcomes? And should we let AI be the future?
It's not even a let the AI be the future. It just is. And, I've been in the business long enough that I remember submitting a project that I had used a printout. Instead of creating it by hand, I used a printout. And the prof said, this is not a professional presentation. You can't just print it out from a computer. Now, it sounds so ridiculous. So when we say a few years from now, already I saw an estimate yesterday that said 90% of all revenue in the advertising industry will be influenced in some way by AI. It's like saying 90% of us are working on a Mac. So what? It's really a nothing. And so it's unavoidable. It is pervasive. And really, you're just going to use it like everything else. And creative people, as I said, are going to be at the advantage. You're going to use it in some weird way that I haven't thought of. And she's going to use it in some weird way that you haven't thought of. And that's the game that we play. We're just going to do what we keep doing. But we are aware of the dangers of AI. We have to think about the ethical issues. We have to think about ownership. We have to think about copyright. And this is what I said about great responsibility. We're not going to blindly just use the tool. We know that AI bakes in bias quite terribly because it's been trained on language models and databases that have bias already encoded into it. So the professional responsibility that you raise up to is saying, don't take it for granted. Don't take something at face value. You're going to have to pause and think responsibly about the work that you're creating and the tool that you're using, because the damage can happen much faster. When I talked about something that would take 10 hours that you could do in 10 minutes, you can create a lot of biased work very quickly. And if you're not making the good judgment calls, you're putting poison out into the world. That's your responsibility.
That's great. And I feel like we forget that sometimes when we're busy in our day-to-day jobs, the impact that we can have. Okay, last question, and it'll be another two-parter from Jessica Knapp. She asked, what's the most exciting part of your job? And then just any final parting words of advice to the students.
Okay. So I'd say the most exciting part is definitely the variety. There is nothing that ever repeats in terms of new client, new project, new situation, new people, new way of doing things, new context, new platform. Literally, for someone who is excited about change and diverse experiences and just being challenged by different ideas, for me, that is absolutely the most exciting part of the job. And because I'm in a position to influence hundreds and hundreds of creative people, I love helping them find their thing. I love turning them into this amazing creative version of themselves by sometimes challenging them and saying, you know, I've never heard that before. And how did you come up with that? And maybe there's this twist on it. Like, we literally get to do that all the time. And so for me, that's one of the most exciting things about the work. And in terms of a parting piece of advice, it really is about taking our creative skills seriously. You know, there's an assumption when I was in business school. So I did a BCom, I studied design, and then I went and did an MBA 10 years later. And in business school, it's interesting how there's this assumption that creative people are flaky and what we do isn't serious. And I like to walk into lectures now and say to a room full of people who want to go into investment banking or finance, and I say, just remember, you have nothing to invest in until we creative people come up with something. Creative people are the only ones who create value in the world. And that has to do with any innovation that becomes a thing. I don't care if it's Moderna coming up with a vaccine. Someone had to think about combining and use of DNA in a different way. That is a creative act. Every new thing in this world starts with a creative act, and that's what we do for a living. We happen to be doing it in the context of marketing and advertising, but I respect creative people everywhere they are, because we're the ones who create net new value and are the drivers of change.
Love that. Amazing parting words. I know there are so many questions still in the Q&A, but we will see you later in the in-person networking portion. So anyone on the line virtually, Seba will be there. We do also have 2 more panels, so the next one's coming up now, so we'll get to those questions as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for being our keynote. Invaluable advice, and we'll see you later.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. All right, I am going to pass it over to Darina, who is our moderator for panel 1. And can all of our panel 1 panelists please turn on your video, come on screen, and we are going to dive right in. So for all the students on the line, we're going to do a couple prepared questions, but please write in the Q&A. This is for you, and we're going to have access to these industry leaders to answer more of your questions. So Darina, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Caitlin. I think we are waiting for Ron as well, but thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Hi, Ron. Hi, Alison. Hi, Ivan and Christina. Well, I'm going to be a moderator for this panel for today. Excited to be here, excited to talk to you guys and learn more about networking As we all know, this is an unknown world that no one knows what to do in. And a lot of questions are usually coming in and people asking, well, what's networking like and what to do? So let's dive into this and ask some more questions. But if you will actually, before we do that, let's do a roundtable and would love to hear some of your interests. So please introduce yourself and let's start with Christina.
Hi, yeah, I'm Christina Gardezabel. I am the Associate Creative Director at Wunderman Thompson. I've been in the industry for almost 15 years, and I've kind of had a very winding path in my career, from client services to strategy to creative. So I've touched literally sort of every corner of the industry and have an understanding of what it kind of takes to create something from concept to creation to optimization. So super excited to be here and lend my expertise on multiple different angles.
Amazing. Thank you, Ivan.
Hey, thanks. Ivan Pehar. I lead Spotify in Canada. I'm coming up to 4 years now. In addition to working at Spotify, I also teach at Humber College and have for the last 8 years. So here we go. Any students from my class here, maybe, drop a heart in the chat. Let me know that you're here. I spent my entire career in media, in 25 years, from agencies to publishers and now here. So I'm really excited to be here, and we'll pass it over to the next person.
Awesome. Hi guys, I'm Allison Rintoul. I'm a director of global client strategy at the Trade Desk. And if you're not familiar with the Trade Desk, we are an advertising technology platform that is global. We work primarily with agencies and brands all around the world to do online advertising across channels. So I've been with the company for about 5.5 years. I was one of the first, so we've grown our team to over 50 people in that time, which is really cool. Before the Trade Desk, I was at Yahoo doing a very similar role. And my first job in the industry was agency side. So worked at Group M in their digital programmatic arm, Xaxis. So my career has been all in digital advertising, all in programmatic. So if that's what you're looking for, you want to learn more, would be happy to connect. But really excited to be here and talk about networking. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. And the last person, Ron.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ron. For those of you who have not seen my LinkedIn podcast, or have not listened to the Wisen Up podcast, we run a community online that helps newcomers and international students launch their career. Our promise is we help newcomers and international students launch their career within 6 sessions. So far this year, in the last 41 weeks, we've had weekly LinkedIn audio live sessions. That's quite exciting. We've got 150 to 350 people coming in, and we've helped over 293 newcomers launch their careers this year, with an impact of over, I would say, $17 million in salary to the Canadian economy. So I'm excited to be here and take on questions about networking and about what newcomers need to do to break into the industry.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your introductions. One thing to reminder for everyone, for first 2 students who put their questions in Q&A box, when we get to the point where you guys ask questions, you guys will get a gift card. So don't forget about that, because I almost did. And so now let's get started. So the first question for all of you, so feel free, whoever wants to jump in first, please do. So the first question is, how do you approach networking?
I can jump in. So I've been thinking about this question, obviously, because you gave them to us ahead of time. And one of the things that sort of struck me as, sort of a key thing to think about when I'm networking is to sort of show up instead of show off. I think that a lot of the times when we're trying to make a contact, a connection, we really talk about ourselves, we push ourselves forward, but, kind of showing up in the space of understanding who I'm speaking to, getting an understanding of, who they are, what their barriers, boundaries, objectives are, And I can do that via LinkedIn. I kind of look at a little bit of their history of where they're working right now. Then I can look up the site for, wherever they're working right now, understanding who their clients are, understanding, a little bit of a, sort of follow the bouncing ball of like, who am I speaking to? Where do they work? What are the, the things that they're facing on a day-to-day, so that I can connect with them in a human way. So that's something that I like to do, is a little bit of research to show up instead of show off.
Maybe I'll add to that, Christina, is that as we've started going back to in-person meetings, and that, my goal every time I walk into an agency, a client, any meeting, is to walk out with 2 new contacts. And it could be anyone at the table. And I think, fundamentally, when we think about networking, or how I think about networking, is like short-term and long-term networking, right? How are things that I do today to grow my network, to meet 1 or 2 new people every day based on those experiences, but also the long-term impact of fostering those relationships, because you never know. We're in a really small industry, people move around, clients and contacts move around. You never know when that person you met maybe 3 years ago has now moved into another role and could potentially be, someone who's hiring. So I really think about like those bite-sized pieces, right? From an in-person, short-term and long-term. And then when I think about how I leverage LinkedIn, it's about bringing value to part of conversations that are happening on the platform, right? And Ron, I'd love to hear like your perspective on that. And I think LinkedIn's great, but I think if we just rely on LinkedIn too much without bringing value to users, we're probably not using it to the full capacity. So really think about like virtual and in-person networking, of every day having that goal of just meeting new people.
Allison, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the way that I have thought about networking, and sometimes when you're new in an industry, you're a new grad, the thought of networking can feel very big and intimidating, especially if you're introverted, which I happen to be. Going into a room of strangers and having to talk about yourself and create conversation can feel kind of scary. But what I tend to do is I just remember, no matter how senior, how accomplished somebody may be in their career, which is obviously why you want to connect with them and learn from them, they were once in your shoes, right? So they were once a new grad, they were figuring out what they want to do with their lives, they were interviewing, trying to get their spot in an interview. So that has helped me just kind of bring things back to reality and go into those conversations or those opportunities with a lot more confidence. And then the other thing I would say is, like, similar to what Ivan said, is networking can happen at any time, anywhere. I've met people on vacation in Jamaica on the beach that have led to a job. I've met people at the gym. So yes, there's all these amazing professional settings where we can network, but it also just happens every day. At the grocery store, you can meet somebody. So I think having that positive attitude, going into it, being interested about learning about other people, can be really all you have to do to make that connection and follow up with them later on and see what happens. So that's been my approach.
I love it. And honestly, I met Caitlin and Teen on a student day back in 2020. So same thing, honestly, you connect with people, you learn more about them. And not only is come with the expectation to get something out of it, it's more of a, positive attitude and that connection that you make that might grow into something else. And Ron, would love to hear your perspective.
So I mean, from a perspective of someone who's new to the country, someone who's an international student, there's a lot of fear associated with that word. And so I tend to not use that word. I just say talking to your future team members. I say, just imagine you're talking to your future team members, kind of take the heaviness out of the word. And I ask them to earn the right to ask. So this concept of networking is not very popular in other countries when you come from South America or from Asia. It's a different form or different understanding of that word. So to kind of bring it into context, I tell them to, it's all about them, get to talk about, make the other person feel comfortable, go in with a giving mindset, because the pressures that the international student has is they've got a work permit, they need to get their PR. And if they don't get their job, they cannot stay back in the country. So, and then many of them are supporting and paying off their loans back home. So they're trying to get the job as fast as possible. So the first message that says, "Hi, I see a job opening at your company. Can you please refer me to that, to that role?" And I say, please don't do that. That's not considered something that's acceptable. Earn the right to ask. So build meaningful connections. Earning the right to ask is all about understanding the person in front of you, doing research about the company, doing research about the role, finding common areas of interest, right? And then building that. And then we have a framework called the FEC protocol that we teach on how you connect virtually. But I'm in complete agreement with the panel in the sense that it's a combination of both in-person and virtual. You can start with the virtual, and then when you meet them in person, now you've got something to fall back on. And so, yeah, I think getting over that fear, whether you're extrovert or introvert, you're walking into a room of strangers, that takes a lot of practice. And I think by practicing that, we get better at it.
Hey, Ron, can I just add to that? I had a guest speaker, Jed, who's going to be on the next panel after us. He joined my class and he shared something that I wrote down here. He calls it the give, get. Like, how do you give value to someone on LinkedIn 3 times before you ask for something? So I have my LinkedIn open over here. Today alone, I have 75 requests. And these are from, hey, you have a great career. Can I get a coffee with you? Hey, can I, refer me to this job? I then go back to that give, get. Is like, I know what they get out of this, but what do I get? And Absolutely. That value exchange. And heck, if I just responded to everyone, I'd spend all day just drinking coffees with people. And I think it's being able to use LinkedIn and give value to those users on the platform before you ask for something in return.
Right. Exactly. So, and that's what we teach. I mean, I don't want to get into the details. I don't want to give away the secrets, but that's what we teach, about how do you give the value in terms of the FEC protocol that I talked about. But there is a way that it can be taught, and things that we pick up naturally. Some people pick it up naturally, but how do you consciously, train yourself to be good at networking, right? That's what it's all about.
And just to add on that, like when we say give value and give, I think when you're first starting out, you're like, what do I have to give? I need to gain in order to give. And I think that that's one of the hardest things when you're starting out. You're like, what makes me unique? What makes me stand out? And how do I still do that, show up without show off at the same time? And I think my best recommendation for that is if you have a point of view on something, and you reach out to someone to connect with them, you should be able to connect with them on your point of view. You should have, read some of their content on LinkedIn. You should reach out and say, hey, I saw this post that you put up. I really love that. Can you tell me more about it? And that's a way to start a conversation. That is an example of adding value.
That's exactly what we teach. Engaging with the posts, engaging with the comments that are happening online. If the person is active online, you can definitely use that as an opportunity to start a conversation.
Amazing. And just want to also to add to that. So that's a great kind of connection with our second question that we had. It was more about also virtual and in person, right? As you guys just mentioned that you have a lot of students or new grads that are coming in and they are not quite sure yet how to do all this networking thing. And I know you already mentioned some of the things, but if there's any more practical advice, would you be able to give? That would be great. Because right now, as what we have seen in the industry, a lot of people are coming back to the offices, right? So now a lot of people that came from a background where you used to be just on Zoom all the time or on Teams, and that's how you connect with people. That's the only way for your network. Now you somehow need to show up and connect with people in person as well, and also network with them. So is there more practical advice that you would be able to provide?
Yeah, I can jump in. I'd say, it is so hard in a post-COVID world where you're like, how do I get someone face to face, right? Like, am I going to stalk them at their place of work, jump out at the entrance? How do you connect? And I think that, one, using opportunities like digital platforms like LinkedIn or other social platforms where you see people who are going to be in person at events. You can show up at those events and you don't have to feel like a stalker. You don't have to feel creepy. I think that if you show up with that give mentality to an event where you're following someone, it's appreciative. They're at that event for a reason too, probably to give back. So kind of using multiple platforms to find out, because kind of just doing a cold call, like via message, being like, can I buy you a coffee? We're probably really busy. We've probably been offered a lot of coffees throughout the day. I think having patience and being able to plan how you do an in-person is something that you just have to realize that it's not going to happen like this. It's not going to happen overnight. Have patience, find out what's important to your audience and who you want to follow, and don't feel like you're a stalker as long as you're bringing value.
Let me add, Christina, to that. I'm going to say it. If you are an intern starting a role, if you just started in your career, if I were in your shoes, I would aim to be in the office 4 or 5 days a week. There is internal networking at your place of employment that if you are just not present there, you're not going to be exposed to that. It is the hallway conversations. It is, people having lunch. It's, someone leaving a meeting. It's being introduced to new people. That stuff will organically happen when you're in the office. It is so much easier to meet new people. Again, I encourage you, it might feel a little weird, but to do that, to go back, right? Be the one that's in the office from an internal, when you have a job. The other thing I would say is, how do you continue to practice networking? It is difficult. And I even at times, feel intimidated and that. And how I practice all the time is, whenever I go out, whether it's at Starbucks, when I'm filling up gas, any interaction that I have with a human being, okay, I try and strike up some conversation. I ask simply, how's your day going? And if their response is the day is going great, what made the day great? Or if they say, I'm not having a great day, what's wrong? Is it the weather? Is it just to get the other person to talk? And I think we have so many different levers, right? We all love to hear ourselves talk, but how do you engage the other person? So those of you that are going to the event tonight, just know that everyone else that's going is feeling the same thing. And if you walk in and say, my goal is to meet 3 people, just 3 people, and you simply start by, hey, my name is so-and-so, what's your name? Where do you go to school? Where do you work? And from that, having the conversation just naturally happen. So, I think that the practicing part takes time, but it's okay. No one's perfect. I think just acknowledging that we're all feeling the same thing, it is definitely a huge step forward.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Ivan, I think something I heard recently that really stuck with me was, when you're new and you're trying to break into an industry, no one's expecting you to say the perfect thing. I think you don't need to, practice going in to say the perfect sentence or the perfect opening line to somebody. I think the more important thing is that you're showing that you're interested in that other person and you're interested in their background, how they got to where they were. So I think if you can show that, that's going to make that person feel good. People like to talk about themselves. They like to share their knowledge, and we all remember people who make us feel good and make us feel positive. And we also remember people who make us feel negative. So I think what you do and how you make someone feel is more important than saying the perfect thing. So don't stress too much about what you're going to say when you go up to somebody later today at the networking event. Just asking questions, being interested in them is a fantastic start, and the rest will just come.
So what we usually remind international students is to, whenever they're going for a tech event, like Collision Conference or a seminar, is to do research, learn about the people that are coming in. And so if you have a banking domain or if you have a finance domain, you've got some experience working in some kind of industry, look at the people that are showing up there and then do some amount of research to find out, has there been any press releases, any articles written about their company, the product, the project, and the CEOs. And it gives you some talking points to kind of start the conversation if you get to meet them. I mean, not necessarily the ad or the PR agency background, but people in any other domain. If you find that there is some kind of information available about them out in the press or out on their websites, or when you read their LinkedIn, use that to your benefit. They'll appreciate the fact that you've done your research. But again, there's a fine line between being stalkerish and appreciating people. Everybody loves being appreciated, so use that to your advantage.
Amazing, great perspective. There is one interesting question that I think everyone wants to ask. I actually seen a couple in the chat box here, but it seems like networking in the industry, everyone feel that this will lead to a job. There is always some kind of like a hidden expectation or hope that that will lead into something, right? You're connecting with a person right now, and then what? Like, when is my job coming? You know, my way. So I do personally talk to a lot of students too, and they're like, well, why would I do networking? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? Why don't I just go and send out 100 resumes on LinkedIn, and that might lead me to something else? So there is a very interesting question here. How do you actually should go about networking and get into the visibility of a recruiter? So the question for you, how, and then if you actually should be aiming for
that. So I think networking is something that, if we look at it, and I think that we've mentioned this before, and Ivan, I think this was something that you've pushed, is sort of like, it's not overnight. It's not instant. It's not instant gratification. It's something that you have to work at. It's a skill. It's not just something that you do. And that skill is how do you make yourself memorable to people that matter to your objective? If your objective is to get a job, then you should be doing all the things that are going to get you that job, in terms of building a portfolio, finding the right people to contact that could potentially get you the job if there's a position available. If there's no position available at a place that you really want to work at, networking is an opportunity to make you memorable to the people who can say yes or put you in a position to be considered in the future. And so for future networking is really important to make it memorable to the people that could potentially get you a future job. Recruiters, I would say, is a little bit different, because their job is to gain a roster of people to then basically fill positions, right? So I think that getting yourself on a roster is, again, something that's great for a potential future position, but it's all part of an ecosystem of a strategy of selling yourself within the industry.
I'll add to that. So Ron, go ahead, Ron.
I'd like to share a story. What happened was, this is a newcomer who graduated from a program, I think it's Sheridan Humber, but he came in as on a humanitarian program from Iraq, Kurdistan. I don't know if you guys know about it. So he's new to the country. He's got a family, a young family, a small child. He had a stint in Europe where he worked in the ad agency, the PR world, and he was really passionate about breaking into the PR world, digital marketing, social media marketing, but wants to get into the agency world in Toronto. And he was telling me the story where he created these innovative resumes with cover letters, and actually had envelopes and sent it out to, I think, over 100 agencies. And he was extremely frustrated and extremely upset at the fact that no one, not even one, responded to me, right? And we were having this late night call, and I told him, why not go and volunteer at a company? Go and sit at startup events and offer your inputs, offer your skill set to help them achieve their goal, help them solve their problem, because everybody needs help with marketing, everybody needs help with social media. And kind of tone down his expectations of things just happening right away. But I mean, in all fairness, he's been trying for about 4 or 5 years and really frustrated, and came to the end of his all his hopes. But the good news is, after he kind of got all his frustration out, and then he realized that he just needs to go back to the basics and show people what he can do in person, he managed to get a job at an agency. And so the idea of networking, when we go in, and if we are going in with that attitude of the energy that I want to get something out from this, the other person is going to pick up on that, and they're gonna, their shields are going to go up. But if you go in with the mindset that you know what, I can do this for you. I can help you solve this. And how about I help you reach this specific goal, and then volunteer maybe 5 hours per week, or maybe a couple of hours every other week, and help them, show them what you could do. That would speak, volumes about your ability, then rather than sending messages or just trying to start a conversation. So I was tying into what Ivan was saying earlier, is what is in it for them? And if you can demonstrate that, then it makes the conversation a lot easier.
Ron, you also talked about like volunteering and that. I'm going to say we're in an industry where there's a lot of organizations looking for help as we go back to in-person events, whether it's IAB, whether it's NABS, whether it's AdClub, whether it's CMA, like all these organizations, if you reach out and said, hey, I'd love to volunteer. I'd love to volunteer. 99% of the time, they're going to say yes, of course. And then you're going to ask, hey, can I volunteer and actually be at the registration desk? Because what's going to happen then? You will literally give the president of the agency, hey, so-and-so, my name is so-and-so. Here's your pass. Have a great day. Just through volunteering your time to get in front of individuals. And then let me just, give another example of, if you're in school right now and you're in one of the programs, your network is also the 30, 40, 50 people in your class. That is your immediate network. Think about, how do you foster that network? And, I've seen over the years where students are helping each other at different roles. If someone's working at a company that you want to work at and they're already there, it's a lot easier to get in using that network of, someone who was your classmate a few years ago. But it's, if you haven't talked to them in 2 years, out of the blue, to be like, hey, can you refer me to this job? What have you done to foster that relationship over the years? It really is no different than growing a tree, right? It doesn't happen overnight. You have to continue to foster it and give it water, give it everything to grow. And if you're just there asking for everything, you're not going to be successful.
And also to add to that, it seems like you might get this advice from a lot of different sources, I guess, is volunteering, right? Like you hear like do certification, volunteering, but I think a lot of people would be surprised how many people actually do that. And all the volunteers that we have with us today is people who actually reached out to us. There is always some hidden opportunities out there. There's a lot of opportunities, possibilities, just you do this and that's how you also stand out. So just wanted to add to that. And I think that's also important to mention. Allison, I don't think you had a chance to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I was just going to add on and say, I think networking and building your network over time is just like any relationship. It's a two-way street. So yeah, just as you would treat a friend or a family member, you're not just going to check in when you need something from them, hopefully. But you're nurturing that relationship over time. You're congratulating them on promotions. They post something, that you want to comment on and have a discussion around. Maybe you read something in the news about their company and you want to discuss more about that with them. So there's ways that you can connect with them over time that show that you are genuinely interested in them. So when it comes time to ask them for a favor, introduce you to someone in their network, give you a chance to interview at their company, they're going to have that, touch point in the back of their mind and be more willing to want to help you out.
And I think you also just answered my next question, but would love to hear more thoughts on this. And I think it's very important, not, as you just mentioned, reach out to people, connect with people, not only for something, right? I need a favor. Hey, like, I want a new job. It's just also some touch points and happy birthday and congrats on your new job right now. Some touch points like this. So there's one question here that I find very interesting from Ashley Spiegelman. When you meet someone at a networking event, for example, today, what is the best way to keep the communication lines open and to continue building a relationship?
So I wanted to kind of actually jump off of like what Allison had said last and what you're asking now is, it really depends, I think, on the individual of how to best connect with them. Like in the last year and a half, I find that like LinkedIn is like the platform for me. I'm on there every day. I'm like Facebook, I'm done with. Instagram, I kind of go there at night to just look at like cute cat videos. But like, because I'm at work and I want to educate myself and I want to elevate and continue to like foster my own points of view on something, I'm always on that channel. And I'm more likely, and this is just personally for me, it's different for everybody, is that personally for me, I would prefer that you reach out to me there because I'm more likely to respond to you versus an email, because I'm at work and my email is like, oh, I'm working. It's not a work task. Like, I'll put that email for later and it'll be really easy for me to forget about it. So I think that you should find out personally what preference of a communication for following up on networking is for that person. If they love coffee, then like invite them out for a coffee like every month, right? Like, I think you have to personalize it.
I would just add, here's one of my pro tips. I'll share with everyone free of charge. Is when I'm at an event somewhere, I meet someone, I pull out my phone. Can I connect with you on LinkedIn? Of course we can. And like, can I just do it real time right now? Real time. And I open up, like, I'll even pass my phone to them. Hey, can you put your name in here? And like, is that you? There's multiple Ivans on the platform. So I think it's just my way of like immediately, and then right away they'll accept it. I'm like, okay, step one is done here. Right. So, I'm sure, many of you, when you go tonight, you're gonna be like, hey, can we connect on LinkedIn? Many of the people that are there will feel overwhelmed because so many requests, but if you do it real time, let me pull out my phone, connect real time right now, half of that job is already done.
I would say one tip that I have is, and this is really anytime, you're talking with somebody that you're networking with, when you're following up with them, try to keep mental notes of the things that you talked about during your conversation so that you can include that in your follow-up. I think that shows that you were active listening, you remembered what it was you discussed. If there were any follow-ups, you can include that as well. I think that to me always shows, okay, this person actually cared about our conversation and they were interested and they remembered what we talked about. And that comes true into your professional life as well with clients, when you're meeting with clients or other colleagues within your company, that active listening skill and remembering what you discussed and then following up after to talk more about those things just shows that you were really invested in that conversation.
I'm so happy everybody's talking about LinkedIn. I've been trying to drive this point home. Everybody loves to be on Instagram, but they don't understand the power of LinkedIn. So thank you so much. Can Trina just send me that clip so I can share it to everybody and tell, get off Instagram and get on LinkedIn. And I love Ivan's point. In fact, I remember one of our members actually used a business card where he had a barcode that you could scan and immediately go to the LinkedIn. So he used that as his business card. But I mean, I see someone said hello. Zainab says hello. I said she met us at LinkedIn. So hi, Zainab. I mean, as a takeaway for the students who are going and meeting, your professors and the people that you meet today and people from the industry, is just be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. Be yourself. Put your best foot forward. There's no perfect way to network, and they know that you're nervous. They're also nervous. Use every opportunity that you can to show your work or your portfolio. If you have that with you, I mean, that's great. If not, just if you know something about the person, try to talk about them and make them feel comfortable around you. Come across as someone who is helpful, who's got a giving mindset, someone who is professional, someone who, who is mindful about their personal space and their personal time, who's friendly, who's easy to get along with. If you come across with that energy, and it makes the other person very comfortable, right? And there's a principle called the mirroring principle from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you read that, it's a very interesting technique or a strategy that people use in sales and in networking, is to mirror the person in front of you in terms of the body language and also in terms of the pace in which they're speaking, right? So if they're fast, try to keep up with that. If they're slow, match their non-verbal and their verbal communication styles, because that is a subconscious way of making people around you feel comfortable and to earn their trust. So, I mean, read that book. I mean, and in your spare time, it helps you with your networking. And yes, all the best, guys. I hope you guys have a fun time tonight networking.
Ron, I love that you brought up mirroring because I just took a master class that was hosted by this ex like FBI negotiator. And he was like, you have to make a connection so fast in that situation for this complete stranger who's in a really heightened state of anxiety to trust you when you're coming from the other side. And mirroring is a huge part of that. And, you know, it goes from body language to tone to also what the person is saying. And, you know, sometimes I've tried this at events, and sometimes you have to kind of like slow it down a little bit because you're like, oh my God, I'm a parent to this person. But like, you know, even repeating their question, like their statements back to them, it opens up a forum for the other person to talk, right? If you're like, oh, so you like social media for business, what do you like about it, right? Like you take the last thing that they said and then you turn it into a question. It's a really great networking tactic.
Exactly.
Love it. And could you please repeat the book again? Maybe we can just plug it in the link in the chat as well.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Perfect.
Stephen Covey, Covey.
Love it. Okay, so we'll add that in, and I think a couple last questions because we are almost on that time. So for students, please add your questions now. We have still a couple more left. One interesting thing that I also saw in questions here. So I guess a lot of people that come to networking event, later on they connected with people, they are not sure how to actually follow up, right? Because that's important piece. You don't want to be that annoying person that is like following up on my follow up, you know, recently. So what is your recommendation for follow-up, for cadence? What is the best way to do that so you are not showing off as maybe an annoying person a little bit, right? And you're showing that you're actually interested to continue communication with them.
I'll say, who was it that said earlier, remembering part of the conversation you had, right? Yeah, so it's like, hey, you know, maybe we're talking about AI, right? Hey, we're talking about AI. To go on LinkedIn, find something intriguing, having a POV on AI, and then tagging that person saying, hey, from our conversation, I think you might find this interesting. Just very subtle, right? Like, oh, you remember that conversation. You must have talked to 100 people, but you remembered me about my conversation. And this happened to me recently, is that I'm so busy for coffee. Someone mailed a physical gift card for Starbucks to my office. And they said, Ivan, I know you're too busy for coffee, so have a coffee when you have time. I hope you enjoy it. So again, two memorable experiences that, you know, one physical, one, you know, in virtual and physical, right? Of like just being memorable to that person.
I'm gonna call it like the 3 C's. Sorry. Like, I love what you just said. It's like you can give content, right, as a follow-up. You can give congratulations because you're following on things that they're achieving and doing, and you can give coffee.
That's amazing.
Is there any ways to, sorry, just to add to that question quickly, is there any other ways you think that you can actually stand out with your follow-up? And Allison, please go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I was just going to say, I think the follow-up is actually an amazing opportunity for you to showcase your communication skills. And so it is kind of like one of those things you want to try to get right and not, you know, send a follow-up every single day for 2 weeks and totally overwhelm that person. I think making sure you're being really thoughtful in the message that you're sending, you're giving them a couple days to get to it because they're probably very busy. You know, sending another follow-up a week later and just saying, you know, just following up, checking in on how things are going. I think it's a great way to showcase your written communication skills, like reading the room. If you followed up 3 times, they're not getting back, say, hey, this is just sounds like you're busy. Please later on, if you have time to connect, would love to hear from you, but, you know, take care for now. I think it shows a lot about a person and how you're communicating in that interaction. So I would just be mindful of that when you're doing that follow-up.
I'd say it depends on the how did you leave that conversation? So if there was an ask, right? So if they told you, okay, send me your portfolio, or there was something that they asked you to do, make sure you follow through, right? If you don't follow through that, you lost the opportunity. Or the other way, I mean, they said that, oh, I'll get back to you, or send me a message after 3 weeks, or they were supposed to send you something, and then so make sure that there was something that that was agreed on mutually, that you've got to follow through, right? But LinkedIn is a great way to be subtle and not be in your face in terms of following through, right? You can go there and comment in their comment section on any post that you have. You can write a post or create a post on the topic that you guys talked about, and like Ivan was saying before, you could share something about the topics that you were attending an event, they talked about something that both of you guys kind of connected on, and then you can create a post on it, or you can share an article that you read on it, right? And in terms of books, and in terms of people being scared about networking and what to do, I don't know if you guys can see it. Can you guys see it? This is Jack Canfield. Oh no, you can't see it. Okay. It's called the Success Principles. I don't know if you guys can see it. Nope. All right. No. Like, you see him, but you see Jack Canfield, the Success Principles, and he talks about how many times you got to be ready to hear no before you can get to hear yes, right? It's a principle that anywhere between 3 to 7 times, and anybody's in sales, they'll tell you that, be ready to hear a no, be ready for people not to respond to you. Not everybody's going to be, all excited to talk to you. So be ready to get at least, 3 to 7 no's. And then, I don't know if you guys can see this. Okay, it's called the 80-20 principle. All right, I'll send this guy to you guys. It's the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle. Choose 20% of the actions that you can invest on that'll give you 80% of the results. So even in your network, there are going to be 20 people that's your tribe. That's the people that are going to connect with you. Not everybody's going to be your tribe. Not everybody's going to connect with you, and that's okay. So find that group. I apply the 80-20 rule in all aspects of life. So do that, find how you can apply the 80-20 rule in your networking, in your job search, in your how you prepare your resume, and even in how you measure your daily activities and the kind of work that you put in. Pick the right 20% of action items that you can invest your time, your resources, your energy into, and you'll see that you'll be a lot more productive and a lot more effective in your strategy.
Love that. Okay, and the last question, and I already seen some speakers from the next panel, so I guess that's coming up shortly. So as we know, usually for us to start that networking, if it's virtual, if it's, let's say, LinkedIn, you need to start that communication. And one of the ways to do that is send to request, and not just a regular request, but hopefully with a note. So there's one question in the chat here from Janvi. What should we write in the LinkedIn request message that give positive first impression?
My suggestion is not to send that message. Do not send that message. First, follow them. You don't need a permission on LinkedIn to follow them. Before you hit the connect, first follow them, and then engage with them. So that means you're engaging with their content. Go into the history, see their content, engage, do some research. Just don't, spray and pray. Engage with them. And then create a meaning. And what happens is, if you find a post that you think that you really connect with is in your domain of expertise or your specialization, repost it. And when you repost it, they'll notice that you reposted. They're going to take and before you do all of this, make sure LinkedIn is up to date. Make sure you have a professional headshot. Make sure you have a banner. Make sure you talk about what you've done so far. Make sure you share your portfolio in the featured post section. Make sure your LinkedIn is up to date. And then when they see, okay, this is interesting, and they, have enough talking points on your profile that they look at it and they'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how he did that. How did she do that? I wonder if they can do the same thing in our team. So have something interesting on your featured post. If you got certifications, show that. If you got a social media certification, Google Ads certification, or just your portfolio page. And so FEC, follow, engage, and then connect. And then connect with them. And so then now we have something to talk about, because if you reposted their content and they saw that they reposted, they're going to come into your comment section and say, thank you so much for reposting. And you're going to go into the connect message and say, you know what, thank you so much for that post. They're going to say, thank you so much reposting, and then you can say, you know, I really like the topic that you wrote about. I really like the company that you work in. I really like the project that you're involved in. You know, can we meet up for about 15 minutes? Can we talk about the product that you're working on, or the client that you're working with, or the technology that you're working with? But there's a context there, right? If they like soccer, you can talk about soccer. If you both of you attended the same virtual event or the same in-person event, then you can talk about that. But make sure you follow and engage with them first before you connect. That's my 2 cents.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Great panel today. I see that Caitlin is here, and that means that our time is up. And before we finish this panel, just wanted to mention, thank you so much all for your questions. Thank you so much, our massive panelists, our speakers, for your time. We do have 2 winners today for gift cards. So that would be Yashika Gahar and Mansi Maheshwari. So I know I saw some of the responses from you guys in the chat already, but if you haven't shared your email address yet there, please do. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. And I'll pass it over to Caitlin now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Darina. Great job. Thank you, panelists. That was such amazing discussion, such a hot topic of networking. I know it's the questions on everyone's mind, and we're going to put some of this advice to the test when we see you all later today. I think overall, though, it's, remember everyone's people at the end of the day. It's just a conversation. So moving right along, panel 2. Can we have all of our panel 2 panelists, please turn on video? Our moderator, Catherine, hello, welcome. Anyone who is on panel 2, that'd be Dominic, Sarah, Jed, everyone who can turn your video on. Let's welcome our panel 2 folks.
I think we're gonna need help starting our cameras.
All right, I'm giving you a prompt here.
Thank you.
All right. And we still have time for questions, students, so do type in the Q&A. All right, I think we've got everyone here. I'm going to pass it over to Catherine for panel 2. Take it away.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Caitlin. I'm Catherine Otto. I'm joining you from Pinterest. Really excited to be here and getting able to welcome our amazing panelists to talk about their journey and how that path can really be influenced by, what we just heard, and sort of then how we can help others stand out through a very, non-linear journey, which I think we can all attest to. So, we have a wonderful group of panelists here coming to you from a number of different parts of the industry with some really exciting backgrounds and experiences. So I'm actually going to kick it over to them to introduce themselves before we get started into our questions. So Sarah, I'll kick it over to you first.
Sure. Hey everyone, and thanks for having me. I'm Sarah. I currently work at Intuit QuickBooks, but overlap quite a lot with other Intuit businesses as well, like TurboTax, MailChimp. I've always worked on the client side, working in different kind of models, whether that's having everything fully in-house or working alongside agency partners. And I've worked in quite a few brands, but largely on the publisher side, and always in performance marketing, handling media buying of any and all degrees and channels.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah. Dominic, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Dominic. I'm on the account side, creative agency called Anomaly here in Toronto. I'm pretty new there. I've only been there for about 9 months, but prior spent a lot of time at various agencies in Toronto, which has been awesome. Scaling different clients, anywhere from retail to CPG to now beer, which is super exciting. So I lead up the Bud Light brand at Anomaly. And it's just an industry that I'm extremely passionate about, excited about, and really looking forward to answering any questions that you may have today. And I'll also be at the networking event should you have further questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dominic. Jorge, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jorge. I'm the digital director at Weightmaker. My journey spans working on different countries, different type of agencies, mostly on the performance side of things, with experience in brands, CPG, car industry, and tech or new economy as they're called.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jed, last but not least.
My name's Jed Schneiderman. I recently started at Kijiji, where I run a part of their ad sales business. Before that, I started my career in marketing at Procter & Gamble, worked at a couple of places like Bell Media and Microsoft, and I ran my own business for 7 years and sold that in 2020.
Amazing. It really seems like, one thing that we've touched on here is that journey really is non-linear, and it has so many amazing and different touch points, which I think for all of the students who are joining us is such a really exciting and invigorating thing to see, to know that you can go from one area to another and really see a lot of success. I know for myself, I actually started in agriculture, not even anywhere close to advertising, then moved into agency and then eventually into sales. So I think one of the things that really, the tie that binds all of that is putting your best foot forward, really allowing your skills, your expertise, and your passion to speak for itself. And really bringing that creativity that we heard from our keynote, as well as from our previous panel, to shine and bring those exciting ideas. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and really certainly from this incredible panel of experts, when you are looking to hire someone who is starting their journey, what are some of the things that person can do? What are some of the things that really stands out to you, and brings that person to the forefront in your eyes? And feel free to jump in.
And I can jump in first. So I think a big one for us is just someone who's eager to learn, ready to grind, ready to get their hands dirty. This industry can't always be taught, and that's okay. So going into it, know that, like, you may be in school, killing it, doing super well, top of your class, but don't feel like you need to know everything in the industry when you get there, and just be prepared to start learning, and sometimes even fail. As long as you're trying really hard, you're there, you're showing up. That's a huge value for all of us. It's something we definitely look for within the interview process as well.
I would also say I've interviewed one of my, I ask this question in every interview I have, and I'm surprised by how few people do it, but I'll say, what do you know about the company? And a lot of people stumble over that, which tells me you're not prepared, you don't actually want it, you're not super keen, and you're probably not going to do a ton of research when you're on the job. So know the company. And then I also look for, tell me something I can use. And again, that goes back to the research phase. So have you looked at our social media? Do you have a tip on something we can improve? It doesn't have to be correct. It just shows me that you've put thought into it and you're truly keen on the opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip, and something that goes a long way, just showing that you've done your research and, about the company, but also about the person that you're interviewing with. I think we heard in the last panel about going on LinkedIn. It's not, quote unquote stalking. It's about doing your research. And I think that's a great tip. Jorge and Jed, anything from you on this?
Yeah, I would say the one question that I always like to ask, and this is somewhat of a trick question, is if you were not in this industry, or if you were looking for something in this industry, what other job would you consider, or what other job would you like having? And most of the times people reply with whatever their hobby is. Like, oh, I would love to be a professional golf player. Or like, very rarely do I get the, no, this is it. This is what I would do, like, regardless of whatever, right? I think that also speaks to the fact that, and helps me understand who actually understands what they like to do for a living, what's the passion within the industry, and what are the hobbies, what are the personal life, the other end, and I like to get that sense of like how much they really want it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, also understanding that from that drives a lot of creativity, right? I mean, it can still be within the industry, but it might be a subsect of, right? Starting out in the agency and then really thinking about leveraging those creative skills that you might have moving into a creative space, or, I really like to work with numbers. So, looking at something that might be in analytics, still keeping it relevant, but then showing your passion as well. And Jed, how about for you? I mean, you have such a breadth and depth of experience within this, and with starting your own companies. What do you really look for?
Well, I think what I can probably do is build on Sarah, Dominic, and Jorge's comments. So, I mean, I echo what Sarah said is one of the ways in which you can make a great impression before you even get an interview is research. And I think that's what Sarah was talking about. So that comes across in your cover letter, that comes across in your resume. There are some new tools out there that help you optimize both for whatever you're applying for. But the bottom line is, if you've done your homework, that will come out across. I think what Dominic said, which is really important, is, you know, what skills do you have and what do you bring to the table? One of the previous speakers that I caught the tail end of is what I say to everyone is, you know, if you go take a look at, no offense to any particular company, but if you go and look at all the large platforms, right? So be it Google, Amazon, Pinterest, TikTok, or anyone else, you can learn all of those while you're in school. So you can add immediate value when you show up, because the reality is they're not asking you to merge two companies if you come from business school. They are not asking you to lead the strategy if you've come from like a media diploma. You're going to be doing hands-on keyboard, very basic work, because you're doing work that someone else either doesn't have time to do or makes more money. And so therefore it's a bad decision if they get paid a lot of money to do a clerical task. So if you know how to traffic ads, if you know how to basically append ad tags, if you know how to work in Tableau or pivot tables, you are literally helping someone get their job done. And that's literally how you can make a first impression. So when you get hired and on day one, you can say, I do these 20 things, which means you're a rover or you're a player that can basically catch work from anyone. You add instant value to the organization. And last is, I'm going to deviate a little bit from what Jorge said, but what we test for is curiosity. And this dovetails, I think, a little bit with what Jorge said and Dominic, is you can't fake curiosity. The question that we ask is, tell us the last thing that you geeked out on. Tell us the last thing that you taught yourself. And we asked that question to someone last week and they bombed. And initially they made it to the final 2 rounds for a job. That was the first question they asked. And the reaction was, at the end of it, they're like, wow, you asked me some really hard questions. I'm like, no, I didn't. I asked you a really basic question. What do you do to demonstrate curiosity? And what they proved basically was that they're on basically social media and Netflix all the time because they don't take any time to learn. And we don't want someone like that on our team, because the world changes every day and you have to learn and adapt. And if you don't have a natural inclination towards that or an aptitude, certainly on my team, like, I don't want to hire you.
That's totally, yeah, that's a great question to ask, and certainly something that I think helps give a little bit of insight, not only for the person who's interviewing, but also the interviewee, to understand, you know, what is this company about? What am I going to bring to the table? And I guess, Jed, me being curious about all the secret codes on Netflix does not count as a good answer then. I'm a sucker for a rom-com. I got to filter through. But to build on that a little bit, you mentioned, you know, going in and doing the in-platform trainings. Do you think that that's something that should be brought up in the interview, or is it just something as part of a resume?
I think if I understand your question, I think it depends, right? Like if you look at the order of operations, job one is getting an interview. So the precursor to the interview is the resume and the cover letter. For some people, they're fighting applicant tracking systems. In other cases, they're fighting the fact that the average resume is only reviewed for 11 seconds. So what you have to do is you have to line up your qualifications and whatever the job description is, recognizing that most job descriptions are poorly written. But notwithstanding that, I guess to answer your question is, if the job calls it out, or if the job has certain skills and these platforms are adjacent to that, go out and get it, right? I mean, again, I don't know who we've got gathered here today, but if you want to go into a role where you're interested in media planning and buying, understanding how these platforms work is really important. if you are actually going in and you are going to be doing media buying and like hands-on keyboard, so be it programmatic trading or otherwise, the reality is, again, Google, Facebook, and Amazon take 85 cents out of every digital dollar in this country. Pinterest might over-index in certain categories that are visually driven and design driven, and that's important to call out. But know what job you're applying for. So if a media agency has certain clients, you could reverse engineer what type of media they're buying, right? So if Sarah's business is very performance driven, presumably search is a big part of what they do, or content marketing, or B2B marketing as they try to hit SMB players. And what Dominic does on the Bud business or the Bud Light business is probably very different, because it could be around beer drinking occasions and all that stuff. So understanding, like, it doesn't take a PhD in marketing to figure this stuff out. So, I mean, I've already told you, Google, Facebook, and Amazon take 85% of every digital dollar in Canada. Start there. If you have an affinity for Pinterest or TikTok, fine, have at it. But like, follow the money, and the money is in those 3 large platforms. And then let's, just for giggles and round it out, let's add Pinterest and TikTok, and you're at 90%. So great, pick those 5. Can't imagine it's more than 10 or 20 hours to get certified in each. 100 hours over 3 months is imminently doable.
I would also just add Excel. I'm surprised how many people come in and do not know how to make a sum in Excel. So having some Excel basics is absolutely expected. It's not like, I just assume everybody has it, and I'm shocked when they don't. So I would add that one in there too.
That's a really great point. And, to further that, a lot of companies are moving to the Google suite. So, Sheets and Docs, all of that. And, one more, and Dominic's might be touching for yours a little bit, but Canva as well. I think that's one that's really continuing to be, at least in sales, and I'm not a very creative person, but using it a lot for presentations, ensuring that visuals look really succinct and nice. So this is all fantastic advice. And if there's any others that people want to throw up, I see a couple hands. So Dominic, I saw yours up first, and then Jorge.
So yeah, I can just give a quick one. From the creative side, so you may be thinking it might be challenging to get some experience there, but you can start in 2 places. One, in your school, what programs are we doing, or are they doing, sorry? Do you have OCMC, for example? That's a great opportunity to tap into the presentation side, into the marketing side, flex your creativity in some of these presentations as well. What other programs do they have? Do they have student council? How can you make that different? How can you create your own agency within the school? How can you go out and pitch small businesses, tactics and ideas that you've learned from your class to build your own portfolio before you go out and apply for jobs? So that's just one to add in as well.
Yeah, that's a great one. Thank you. Jorge?
Yeah, the other thing that I would add is, like, do read what the job posting is. It's incredible sometimes when I get someone that I'm interviewing on my first round. I'm on the media end of things, and they come in with some acumen, but it's more about the content creation side of things, when they're more leaned into that digital part of things. And I'm like, okay, I don't think you're gonna enjoy this one. Clearly, someone more on the creative side of things applying for a media job might not necessarily be a perfect fit. And to Sarah's point, learn Excel 100%. To Jed's point, please learn Power BI, Tableau, any of those quote unquote analytics. We're not asking you to go and learn SAS or any of those more advanced analytic tools that are out there. Just like the basics of, like, how can you visualize and understand data better? That for me would be a game changer if the people that are looking into a job understand the importance of data and how to read through it and how to make it visually beautiful to present. That would be a completely game changer, 100%.
Yeah. So it sounds like from, distilling all of this, really being able to hit the ground running is what will set you apart, and showcasing that as you get your resume in the door, get your foot in the door, which really leads us well into our next question of, once someone is in that interview and they're sitting in front of you, how can they show up really, really well? Sometimes it's virtual and sometimes it's in person. So maybe we divide those out a little bit, but what is it that makes that person really stand out to you as you're sitting in front of them? And Jed, I know we hit you last, so maybe we can get you first for this one.
I mean, a couple tips, like change your background. I don't want to see your dirty clothes. I don't want to see your roommate. I don't want to see a pet running across the back of it. It's a professional environment. Show up early, make sure your microphone works, make your screen, get all the technical crap out of the way. I think I'm a fan of behavior-based interviewing. And so again, these are ways in which you avoid pat answers. So something that I encourage a lot is the CAR interview model, which stands for context, action, and result. So when someone asks you a question, provide context. Well, I was working at this company and this was my job. So let me give you all this context. They're interviewing you. So the action is, what did you do? Not what your boss did, not what your teammate did, not what your CEO did. And the last is the result. So if you have examples where you can't tangibly talk about the results, don't use it as an example. And if you don't have an example, say you don't have an example and let the interviewer decide. So it goes without saying, like, don't lie or embellish or make up the truth. Tactics, if you get nervous, I always say, think like a criminal. So criminals, when they get stopped by the police, often play back the question to the police officer to buy themselves more time. So clarify, right? Like if someone asks you a question, there's no harm in saying, I just want to make sure I understand your question. In other cases, you can say, I really want to know what you're getting at. Like, what is the answer that you're trying to get out of this question? Again, I'll be candid. Most interviewers suck because most interviewers don't actually prepare. So it's up to you as to like how badly you want the job and how much you want to sort of placate their ego. But there is never a harm in asking an interviewer to clarify a question to make sure you understand, because A, it ensures that you're giving the best answer, and two, it buys you more time to think. I will often say when I'm being interviewed, saying, that's a great question. Do you mind if I take 30 seconds to think about this? Do you mind if I write down my thoughts? And depending on the answer that you get back, that can also be very telling about the culture of the organization. So where in your daily life or your working life will you not be allowed 30 seconds to think about something? You'll often be given days or weeks. So a couple like tips and tricks, which is, ask for time, ask for clarification, always provide context in your answer. Make sure that you're explaining what you did because they're hiring you and no one else. And then deal with all the basic hygienic stuff of show up on time, dress properly, get all the technical stuff fixed. Like if you want to do an interview in a coffee shop and there's background noise, like be fully prepared for the interviewer to tune out and get annoyed. Like that's just a bad decision.
That's really good advice, and definitely
I can go on and on, but I'll let other people speak.
No, I think that's great, and thank you so much. Sarah, what about from you?
So I don't remember which panelist mentioned it, but reading the job description, we've had, specifically in the last couple of weeks, I've got a couple open roles on my team and we're hybrid, and the amount of people who will not come in for an interview, that's all I need to know. I don't want to have to babysit you and make sure that you're coming in. The expectation is clear that you're coming in. If you don't want to, we can find someone else who will. So I would say read the job description. I think Jed has a great point about look professional. You cannot overdress for day one or interview one. You can underdress. I'm shocked to see people going to work in Lululemon leggings. Like that to me it's not okay. We can be more casual, but athleisure on the bottom can kind of stay at home. And I think there's a lot to be said about ask that you answered the question. So sometimes I see candidates kind of unravel as they're talking and they're saying something that's related, but not specifically answering the core question. You can ask, did I answer your question? And I've sometimes said, like, not really, do you mind getting back to it? And that's fine. I always think the best interviews are very conversational. So if you feel like it's very tennis matchy and just back and forth, there's nothing wrong with being more human and just being yourself and trying to make it more of a conversation. And I would absolutely ask them questions too, and not the first couple questions that come to mind. Ask them something a bit deeper that will give you insight as to whether or not this is a fit for you as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that circles back really nicely to what we were talking about before about doing your research and, showing up with that curiosity and with that intent to really find the fit for that company that you're interviewing with, but also for yourself. Hopefully this will be a role that you're in for quite a while. And so understanding the values, the culture, if that's your prospective hiring manager as well, what are some of the things that really drives value for them? And then, bringing it back to hitting the ground running, are the skills that you're showing up with then going to help them drive those KPIs further, those objectives within that role, and help you stand out as well? Dominic, how about for you?
Yeah, it's hard to follow after Jed and Sarah. I think you've captured everything, and I've shared a lot about my excitement and looking for people who are eager to learn and grow and have that energy and presence in the room. So I'll lean a little bit creative side. It leans into coming prepared as well, like print out your book, have documents ready to share, show that you know your own work and your own elements that you're presenting. Leaning into the research side too, if you're interested going account side, read up on what the clients are saying about that agency so you can have a valid conversation that's relevant to what the account might be working on in that moment. Review the potential work that the agency has done so you can speak to that, or even bring in some competitive work that you thought was interesting that you could chat with the account team about would be a couple additional tips. And always push for in-person, because virtual is getting to a point of being annoying, and we'd much rather meet you in person if we can, and it's a nice little break in our day to chat.
That's a really great point. And I really like about bringing your physical work. Do you often ask for people to send any of their work ahead of time, or is the expectation to have it printed out, or is a mix of both an option?
Mix of both is definitely an option, yeah. And for the most part, I'm waiting to meet you, so I'm not going to review it ahead of time unless I have a moment. So it's nice to hear it from you and hear you present that work back to me, which gets me excited about you as a potential hire.
Yeah, absolutely. A great time to showcase individuality as well. And Jorge, how about for you?
No, it's like, I think the bases have been covered. I think the one thing that I can also add to this is that do your research in terms of like culture. Sometimes there is definitely not a fit when it comes to culture and the ways of working, and like sometimes people, and I understand the reason behind I need to get a job, would jump into any job that they would be offered, but the culture fit is not there, and 3 months into it they're jumping off, and this actually could backfire really heavily. What I've learned is that this industry is very small. It's a very small industry. Everyone knows everyone in here. Word gets out fast, and if you jump into a job because you wanted to get into a place, or you needed a job and it was not a fit, it's better to assess the whole possibility with a little bit more perspective in terms of like how your career is going to be impacted by this job than just jumping into a job. I think this is one thing that everyone needs to keep in mind as they progress in their career and get a job.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I've been in this industry a little bit over 10 years now, and seeing some of the reoccurring faces, it's always so exciting to me to see my friends, how we've all kind of grown up together and landed in different places. But, and speaking back to panel one and networking, fostering that community and then bringing that community to life in your prospective jobs, or, sitting in interviews, understanding, what job you're going for, and also speaking to your peers or speaking to people within those roles, understanding a little bit more even before you apply, I think is a really great point of helping you figure out if it's a fit for you. So you're also then able to build upon that and make sure that you're going for the right roles and positions. This has been fantastic in terms of prepared questions, and I appreciate all of the insights that you all have brought. We do have a couple questions from the audience that I'm going to throw to our panelists. The first one being, what are some of the best qualities that an intern can bring to the table, or that an intern that you've seen have brought to the table that's led to a full-time job? What are some of the things, and I know we touched on some of them about in platform and, you know, making sure that you're showing up and showing out. But is there maybe one example of an intern that you've worked with that's really been, you know, sort of stuck in your mind and a great example?
I have one. Never make the same mistake twice. So I have had one intern, she's amazing. She made quite a few mistakes, as we all do at any point in our career. She never made the same one twice. I have other interns and have had other interns where you're constantly following up, and it's like, I don't need to do that. You should know better by now. So don't make the same mistake twice would be mine. And always add value. Every conversation you have, try and add value to that conversation or help that person with their day, because that translates to having a really good work ethic and a positive attitude. So people will kind of see that, I think, and try and pull you up and along on your career journey. I know my attitude for myself is there's no job beneath me. If someone needs help cleaning out a swag closet, I'm there. If someone on my team is struggling, I'll roll up my sleeves and jump in and help them. And I want everyone I work with to have the same attitude as well.
That's a really great point. And, you know, I think one of the things that stuck with me in my career has been be memorable, not remembered. And that's always, you know, it's been have people not necessarily remember you, but that, you know, as they think of you, it is in that positive light of, oh, Catherine showed up for this, or Catherine's always willing to lend a hand. And I think that's really great advice. You know, when you say add value, can you give us an example of what that might look like?
So it could be looking at someone else's slides and saying, I see this pattern in the data. Have you thought about that? It could be just curiosity, to Jed's point, having a different point of view. Or it could just be, I see that we have a meeting and there's no meeting room booked. I booked one. It doesn't have to be anything huge. It can be something small, but it just shows that you're on top of it. You're thinking outside of where your blinders are set for your current day-to-day, and you're helping your coworkers in some fashion.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much. That's a really great perspective. Anyone else who might have an example of an awesome intern?
I'll just give a more general answer. Good work plans are measurable. So jobs should be tied to results. They often aren't, because most people don't write good work plans. But assuming one exists, the simple answer is just exceed expectations. And you can get there in a variety of different ways. So if you're working for Dominic or Sarah or Jorge, those might be 3 different jobs. So bottom line is understand how success is measured, understand the building blocks of the job, and then exceed expectations. So if Sarah is asking for a weekly report, you know, if you get the report early, that's exceeding expectations, assuming the result is accurate. If maybe you discuss in advance what an enhanced report would look like, so better visualization of the data, or as someone said, I've lost track, a new insight that might drive, like, you know, better something on the business. That's what exceeding expectations looks like. So to Sarah's point around the interview, like asking if you've answered the question, the same sort of logic applies in your job. So if you're being asked to do something or a set of tasks over the course of a week, a month, or a year, how do you get evaluated? And whatever that method or measure of evaluation is, it's going above and beyond. Even to the point around dress code, right? So you never get fired for being more formal. You're never going to get fired for showing up early. You're never going to get fired for staying late. You're never going to get fired for asking if you can help someone out or take on more work. Like, all of those are examples of exceeding expectations. Or as Dominic said, you know, show up knowing more about the business than maybe the interviewer knows, or knowing more about the competition, or find something that just happened where basically you're giving some information to Dominic that he may or may not have, just to drive better favorability. Like, at the end of the day, we're all humans. Work, as much as we want to automate it, we are victims of terrible bias, and bias of a variety of different means. And so the ways in which basically you get the benefit of the doubt is if you go and above and beyond. And being concrete, above and beyond is tie it to the results and the way in which you're measured. And if you exceed those, then basically you have a better than average chance of getting hired from an intern to a full-time position.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think that ties in really well for all of our students who are looking at their first job, or looking at internships. Thank you both so much for that answer. I know we are a little bit close to time, but I think we've got time for a couple more questions. One is, I think dovetails really nicely into this, but looking at job postings, especially for a lot of these students, they're oftentimes asking for 1 year experience or 1 or more years experience. For some of our students, they are international students, and have a tough time overcoming some of that, or it seems like a really big hurdle. What are some things that they can do, outside of getting the platform training, which we've already looked at, to really set them apart or overcome that barrier, what seems like such a large barrier?
Yeah, I think that goes back to something I mentioned earlier, which is finding opportunities within school to create your own experience. So I'll give you, I guess, a better example of that. So at Sheridan, which is where I went for advertising, they had a student council. I thought that was lame. And our president was like, we'd like for you to lead it. And I was like, okay, but I'd like to change it. We're in advertising, let's make it an agency. So I structured it as an agency and got to interview and hire people that could build experience for their jobs and create their books. So that's an opportunity where you see something within the school that you can leverage, take on as an opportunity to create your own experience. So things like that. Or like go to your aunts and uncles and be like, hey, you've got a company. Can I design this year's holiday card? Can I make swag for this upcoming fundraiser? Stuff like that. Like, find ways to build experience outside of school that sets you apart. And at the end of the day, you all graduate with the same piece of paper. We don't look at if it's an A or D student. You see plenty of D students with jobs and you're like, how did they get a job before me? So be prepared to build your experience and find ways to differentiate yourself from those others.
Yeah, that's great. And I think really lends well into when someone asks, it's that car or star, what are some things that you did in that experience? That's a great example of being able to provide context, action, and results all in one, while showing, initiative and bringing that forward. So thanks so much. That's a great answer, Dominic.
The one thing that I would add for international students is that don't disqualify your international experience just because you don't have Canadian experience. Two things are very important in there, in my opinion. It's one, if you've been rejected for not having the Canadian experience, question yourself if you either wanted to work for that company in the first place. Like that would be my first reaction. Like, don't think it's bad. I think it's actually a blessing in disguise. The second one is get to know the Canadian market, not because you know or you have a lot of experience in other markets means that you understand the Canadian market. This is a very complex market, bilingual market with very limited amount of people to actually target, understand, and it's a 28 million to 32 million, depending on how you see it. Probably for Dominic, it's actually less because it's only legal drinking age to, but get to know those nuances of the Canadian market. Actually get acquainted with the market that you're going to be working on, and try to leverage your international experience into that. That I think it will make you an incredibly valuable asset to any company that you're going to be looking to work for.
Yeah, that's very insightful. And even for non-international students, people who are just coming into this, don't discount your experience outside of the industry. Like I mentioned, I come from an agriculture background, so leaning into some of the farming practices that I learned, and working with team members who were animals at the time, you know, understanding time management and strategies around complex problems. Those are all still things that exist within our day-to-day within advertising. And it's important to, again, bring that forward as part of your creative thinking skills and the ability to contextualize things in a way that matter to the people that you're speaking with as well. So, you know, last but not least, before I kind of give an open-ended, what's your advice? As someone is sitting in the industry, and for all of us, we've all had a couple of path changes throughout the way. What would you say is your advice to someone who's thinking of maybe moving from one part of the industry to another? So maybe from agency into client, or from data into creative, or maybe being an entrepreneur like yourself, Jed. What are some words of wisdom there for someone who's looking to make that change?
Sort of two key ideas. One I've already talked about. You just have to understand the skill set required to do the job. So if you've moved from agriculture into some other industry, or if you've moved directly into what you're doing now, there's a transferability of skills that work. I work with a rubric that is really simple. There's like 6 key behaviors that drive success. It's like leadership, thinking and problem solving, working effectively with others, priority setting, ability to communicate, and technical mastery, which is knowing what you have to do your job. Most people can teach you the technical stuff. As we've talked about, you can go off and learn it on your own. Most jobs fall into those. There might be a handful of slices of that, like setting standards for excellence, various sort of interpretations of leadership. But really, it's understanding what the skills are needed for the job and demonstrating that you have those skills. So if you know the job requires you to be very organized and manage complexity, well, if you've come from a background where that's the day-to-day, you have a great story. So you have to demonstrate that. And I think the second part, which is already touched on, which is curiosity, it shows that you're teachable and that you have the ability to learn. So Sarah's giving a great example. The underlying concept of you don't make the same mistake twice is that you have the ability to both learn as well as be a good student. What that means is, you know, you made a mistake, you learned from it, you were taught that that was a mistake and you didn't repeat it. That's basically a critical quality no matter where you go and what level you are at. Like if you make the same mistakes repeatedly, odds are it will cost you a job, right? Regardless of level. So, I mean, the two thoughts that jump out, and these lists are always longer, is demonstrate the transferability of skills, which again touches on Jorge's comment, which is, you know, if you have international experience, you really just need to show that you have the skills required to do the job. The bonus is, yeah, I mean, you might have come from a country that's way bigger than Canada, in which case you probably have proven you have the skill set in spades, right? And then to sort of Sarah's point, the idea of teachability, which sort of lands on the intersection between curiosity, teachability, the idea that you can grow in a role, you know, both of those will hold you well.
Awesome. Anyone else for the transferable switching paths?
Listen, I'll give you like an example from today. You heard from the last speaker about reaching out on LinkedIn. 7 people have sent me generic LinkedIn messages since we started this talk today. So those 7 people tell me they didn't listen to the previous speaker. I'm not calling them out by names. I've already archived all of them, and I won't be accepting any of those invites for the very reasons that the previous speaker said.
Yeah,
no research, no preparation, no customization. You're typing out a note while the 5 or 6 of us are talking. Like it's like XXX across the board. Like that's just a perfect example of like learning and adapting. Someone gave you advice that was sound. 6 or 7 people didn't listen to it. And that's just like the perfect example of like not being teachable.
I think it's like a mediocre employee is very easy to find, and anyone can find mediocre. And nobody wants mediocre on their team. Like I know from managing people, like managing a difficult employee or managing someone who doesn't take performance seriously, I'm simply not interested. I don't have the time. And if you don't want to take your career seriously, and to Jed's point, if you don't want to listen to the advice that people give you, I can't want it more than you do. So I've done it. I've started my career. I hope everyone that I work with has the same kind of drive, but I can't instill that in you. So yeah, I think it's about selling yourself, and don't sell yourself short by taking yourself out of the race, or by not coming prepared, or by doing anything but showing up to the best of your ability.
Yeah, I think those are great words of wisdom, is, showing up for yourself, showing up for others, taking the advice of others, and really learning and listening, active listening. Are there any other parting words of wisdom? We've got about 2 minutes left. Dominic or Jorge?
Let me think on that. We've already got so many
You
good
can take your 30
responses, so
seconds
I'm
to
not
think
sure.
on it.
Yeah.
I'm all
I
about
can-
giving hack. Oh, go ahead, Jorge.
No, what I was going to say is ask a lot of questions. I like it when I have junior members of my team come to me and ask questions. The curiosity, the openness to learning new stuff that might not known in the past. Like that for me is really, really important. Whenever there's someone new in the team and really comes in and asks questions and questions things, and there's that natural curiosity to learn more stuff that he or she's been exposed to for the first time. I love to see that. That for me is a game changer when it comes to like even the way that I assess people within my team or other teams. It's like, how much do you really want it? How much do you really want to be there? And I saw a question on the Q&A that says, are there any stupid questions? No, they're not. Never. All the questions are valid. If you definitely ask away. And if someone doesn't want to reply to you, probably not a good mentor. Not so like find a good mentor within the company that you're working with.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Mentorships and the ability to have someone to bounce ideas off of is just so important. Dominic, any parting words of wisdom from you?
Yeah, I'll just go back to something I think I missed earlier, which was on how you can stand out when applying for a job. So we are in a creative industry. And unfortunately, I think as of late, we're too used to just applying for jobs online or sending a quick message on LinkedIn. But go back to the days when you stood out and you tried to find ways to differentiate yourself. Send me something. You can, back in the day, they used to fax the creative directors like images every single day, or jokes or copy lines or whatever, or go buy a billboard with your name on it, or make me a video resume, something that's going to make you stand out that I will remember. I think I even know there was, because creative directors like to look themselves up online. Somebody put paid behind all the creative directors' names. So when they actually searched themselves, they saw someone else's website and was like, oh, that's interesting. And they clicked through, went to learn more. And it was interesting. Just find ways to stand out, because we'll remember it, we'll laugh about it, and we'll share it with other people. And if we can't hire you, someone else might. So
That's fantastic. It sounds like, distilling all of this, stay creative, stay curious, stay on top of the things that you need to do, and really show up for yourself and the person that you're interviewing. I want to thank you all so much. This has been, for me, an invaluable conversation to get to sit around the table with, the virtual table with the four of you has been fantastic. And I really appreciate your time. I see Caitlin, so I'm going to pass it over to her, but thank you.
Amazing job moderating, Catherine. Thank you to all our panelists. You can all turn off video now. We really appreciate all your words of wisdom and advice. Thank you. I hope all the students took that in, took notes. Lots of great advice there, and you'll get to meet some of these panelists later today at our in-person event. So I'm just going to do a few things to wrap up here. Can everyone see my screen? I don't think so. Uno momento. Sorry, give me 1 second. Does anybody else from the Ad Club, can you ping me the link to our presentation? I seem to have lost it. Anyways, last things we just wanted to say was a huge shout out to all of our sponsors listed on the side. You'll see them at our booths later today. We're going to have food and drinks and refreshments. We're going to have lots of HR and talent acquisition folks on the line. And I think I'm back here. There we go. Frozen. Okay. So cassette location. You can either take the exhibition streetcar, King streetcar, or go to the exhibition go. We are at capacity, but we don't want to turn anyone away. So if you attended today virtually, please do come. There may be a line. We're going to probably rotate people in and out. If you do have any questions, feel free to type in the chat right now, and folks from our committee will answer you. So I see one question, is it only for students? No, Student Day is for students, recent grads, newcomers to Canada, basically anyone looking for a role. So we hope to see you. Once again, it may be busy, but we're going to make sure everyone gets in. What you can expect, Cassette's going to have their talent acquisition team. We're going to have a resume reviewer on site. So if you are able to print your resume or have it, he's going to be giving advice. Quantcast, which is a programmatic platform. I saw some questions in the QA of folks interested in the programmatic space. They're going to show you how you can get certified, things that you need to do, and also have some opportunities for some job shadowing. Auto Trader, one of our biggest sponsors, they're going to have a booth there as well. Lots of industry professionals there, some that you met already on the call, some that will also be attending from these various companies. Anyone who is in the industry will have a name badge identifying clearly in a different color that they are a mentor and someone in the industry that you can go up and talk to. So please do use these networking tips that we gave you today. Try them out. And we will also have some refreshments. Thank you once again. Huge thanks to our committee. I'll just show them up here on the screen. So Darina, Matthew, Jill, Shreyas, Heidi, Catherine, Cam, Mash, and Nidhi. Big round of applause and thank you in the chat. Once again, these are all volunteers. We all have day jobs and we do this because we truly believe in giving back to our community. As we said, it's a small community. Everyone knows everyone. We hope you all will be in the industry with us one day as our coworkers, our clients, our partners. You never know. So that's why it's always great to meet and make these connections. So these are also some of the faces that you'll see later today. So keep that in mind. And our last prize is we're going to do a random draw for the 10 premium Spotify subscriptions if you attended today. So we have your emails from based on your login. So we'll send you that. But of course, the biggest gift is all this amazing advice and meeting you later today. Last ask is we will also be sending out a post-event survey. We'd love any feedback that you have. This is once again for you. So we hope that it was valuable and any feedback that you have is great. Taking a look here, I don't see any other questions. Yes, congrats to the prize winners and hopefully see you all later today. I'll keep my eye out for you all there. So thank you, everyone.